Hello my friend, this is a video on existential freedom as seen by Maurice Merleau Ponty. Now, Maurice Merleau Ponty was a friend and colleague of Sartre and de Beauvoir, and his views on existential freedom are often in contrast to theirs, although it has to be said it was mostly in contrast to Sartre's views, and he tended to agree more with Simone de Beauvoir and influenced her quite a bit too. So for Merleau Ponty, freedom is not all or nothing power we exercise from a distance. It is a middle path. It is a path between the radical absolute freedom of Jean-Paul Sartre and the rigid determinism of traditional scientific perspectives. And that's important because he was a scientist, he was a psychologist. So his critique of the absolute freedom that Sartre spoke about was quite scathing. He disagreed very much that people are condemned to be free, as Sartre put it in his early work. Sartre said that because we are nothingness at the core, we can become anything at all, and we always stand outside of the circumstances we experience, and therefore we can choose the meaning of whatever is happening at any moment. Merleau Ponty, I think, rightly pointed out that this was rather unrealistic. He argued that if freedom were everywhere, then it would also be nowhere. If a prisoner was supposed to be equally free to a king, because they can both choose their attitude towards their walls, then the word freedom is diminished and loses its applicability to everyday human existence. It becomes absurd. So for Merleau Ponty, freedom always has to be understood as part of his idea that we live as a body subject. We are not a ghost in a machine. There isn't a duality there. We are a body subject. We are embedded in the world. We are part of the world. Our bodies have their own habits, their own sedimented histories, their own particular ways of interrelating with the world they're used to. There is an inherent logic to that. So he gives the example, for instance, of a pianist who doesn't choose every note even when they're improvising. There is no conscious act of will. There is rather a being led into the music, a being in harmony with the music, and the hands of the pianist have a body memory that guides their music. So there is an interaction which is quite harmonious and which gets away from that dualism towards a dynamically experienced wholeness that is pleasant for the person when they become aware of it. So for Merleau Ponty, existence is always experienced in a field. We are born with a specific language, social class, a particular kind of physical body, and that creates the field of our existence. Those things are not obstacles to freedom. They are rather the very things that make freedom possible, because our limits in that way are also our edge. They are the lens through which we interact with the world. So he gives the example, and this is all based in phenomenology. He gives the example of a mountain climber, for instance, who looks at the face of the mountain in a very different way to a person who isn't used to climbing a mountain and who is faced with that for the first time and who sees nothing but a wall. The novice becomes terrified because there is no apparent pathway onto the mountain, whereas the experienced mountaineer will look at the mountainside, a bit like Sisyphus, and see many different pathways and many possibilities for finding a grip. So the mountain's meaning is co-created by the physical sensations, the physical situation, the past experience, and the person's history. It is a complex mix of things, but it is always in motion. It is always a process that people move forward with. But set against that, there is his idea of sedimentation. So the metaphor there is the sedimentation that happens in geology, where layers of rock sediment on top of each other to form the floor of any particular landscape. And he believed that we too are sedimented in that way, that all these things that are set in their ways in our lives, like our background, our parentage, our biology, what we've learned, all of that are like layers of rock, layers of sedimentations. Our past choices and our habits settle into patterns that become the base for our current life and the way we find our path across that. So we can always change direction, but we start from seeing things from a particular perspective, and we are always immersed in these particular sedimented layers of our lives. You can't just delete your history. You have to work through it, and you have to understand it in order to find a path through it. So your freedom only exists within a specific context, and it is always situated. And the body subject perceive and acts through the body, which limits but also enables our choices, our engagement with the world, in which we are condemned to meaning, always involves us in a world which has a certain weight and where we have to take account of the lay of the land. Intersubjectivity is another concept that's important for Merleau Ponty, which also matters to his view on freedom, because it means that our freedom is always intertwined, and he likes to use that word, intertwined with the freedom of others. We are not isolated islands. We are all related together. And all my actions and thoughts stand in relationship to the structures that I myself have co-created in my life. So my freedom is guided by these structures and is always a lot more limited than in the mind of most other existential therapists, theorists, or psychologists.